Hello and welcome to GPTV on Tuesday, the 18th of August. My name's Philip Kingston.
And I'm Gary Peer.
Gary, 26 days till you know what?
What?
26 days until we lumber out of the cave in which we've been dwelling and we're let loose on the unsuspecting public. Will they recognise us, as I will not have had a haircut for 7 weeks, which is 5 weeks more than usual.
You'll be a very hairy Philip Kingston, won't you?
I've got to tell you, I had a shave this morning, Gary, which was the first time I've shaved in about 9 or 10 days. And I had a beard happening where it was brown through here and kind of grey through there. And I've got to tell you, I looked at the mirror when I was shaving, just before I shaved, and I thought, why has Irene put a photo of George Clooney on our shaving mirror? And then I realised, hey, it was me. And I looked exactly like George Clooney.
Either that or she just didn't want to confront having to look at you and wanted something else to look at, which is probably more likely, I would have thought, Phil. Let's move on. 50B Tennyson Street, Highett has been sold.
Shout out to Leon Guzenfitter from our Bentley office, working together with Nikki Jano from our St Kilda office. I loved that story at the sales meeting yesterday, where the two of them had combined forces to sell this townhouse in Highett. The vendor was completely delighted with the result. Don't know whether it's disclosed or undisclosed, but you're going to you're going to jump in.
Undisclosed.
Undisclosed, but what a great result. But viewers, if you want to see what's going on in real estate all over Melbourne, I call it the block effect, Gary, where doesn't matter which suburb you live in or how far out you live, good taste and good design is catching on in all sectors of the marketplace. And I reckon that's a really good example of, that town residence is as good a quality finish and design and interior design as you'd see anywhere.
Philip, 11 at 125 Kambrook Road was just sold from a client in Sydney, a vendor in Sydney, to a buyer from, I think, country Melbourne. And, this is how we're doing business now. It's all online.
Gary, shout out to last week in our sales team who had a massive week. Who would have thought we'd be making this many sales in lockdown? But that was one of our lockdown sales, as was Highett. And a shout out to the team who have adapted very quickly into the new world. Having said that, we're all missing the experience of physically seeing our clients in person.
Nothing replaces face-to-face, does it, Phil? But we're doing our best. 56 Elliott Avenue was sold by Jack Slater for $1,450,000. Well done to Jack. Great looking home.
Shout out to Jack, who's just on fire in the Carnegie Glen Huntly area. He really has emerged as one of the standout leaders of the area, and doing so well. Not only did he have a couple of sales last week, Gary, but he listed another couple of properties, and all from the quiet environment of his Esplanade apartment.
Indeed, he is becoming a little bit of a Mr. Carnegie, isn't he, Phil? But it's not just Highett, it's not just Caulfield, it's not just Carnegie, but we go to Abbotsford with a bit of luck with the old Shamrock Street, Phil, sold by the offspring of the magnificent man himself. And this was sold by Jacob Kingston. Well done to you, Jacob.
A shout out to my son Jacob, who has done the most fantastic job, even if he is my son, and I'm going to give him all of this credit. But all credit does go to him, because this was a contact of his that he got onto that had an apartment in Abbotsford. Jacob said to this friend that we're completely equipped to sell in this high-rise building for him. Interestingly, Gary, I think that currently there's about 8 for sale. Not only have we sold ours for the highest possible price, but we've done it while all of the others are just sitting there online going nowhere. So shout out to Jacob, great result. Shout out to the owner, Ben, who is both a good friend of both Jacob and Ben's, as in Ben the vendor and Ben, my son, who entrusted us with the sale, but really good job. And lovely to say, Gary, that not only did he sell that in record time for a really good price, but he's listed another one in the building. And from your and my perspective, this is a joyful story, is that there's 310 in the building, Gary. So he's just going to, I reckon he can start at the ground floor, work his way up to the top floor, back again, and make a sale a day for the rest of his life.
It could well and truly be very lucky for him, Shamrock. He might set up a little office there out the front, build a little stand, perhaps put him give him a desk and a a mobile laptop. Well, not now, of course, in lockdown, but unbelievable scenes. Anyway,
and of course, Gary, if he keeps up this rate, we'll buy him a little leprechaun hat, and you know, he can weave his Shamrock leprechaun magic in Abbotsford.
He might be a truly lucky Kingston, Philip. I can give him my my $30 mystery quaddy to put on to me on Saturday. It's not my mystery bet. He might be the guy that gets it for me. Phil, we're not going to look. Leah's waiting and on standby, but you know, look, Leah, you're the president of the REIV. You just wait. We'll let you in soon. In the meantime, we've got other things to talk about.
You know, I will just make a shout out. First of all, Leah Calnan is the president of the Real Estate Institute of Victoria.
Not Callahan, Phil. It's Calnan, not Callahan. Callahan was Dirty Harry. This is lovely Leah. Okay.
So there's a lot of people desperate to get on this show, Gary. So we're just going to keep her waiting because, you know, ultimately it was her call about wanting to get onto this show. So, you know, we can keep our guests waiting because the guests, we are more important for their career than she is to ours.
And as for Donald Trump, he's going to wait a little bit longer. And ScoMo, well, you know, we put you on for September, and Dan Andrews, well, we're not quite sure how you're going to help with the ratings at the moment, but you're doing your best, I'm sure, in your own lovely way. But Philip, our first Zoom auction, we've talked about it, we've discussed it, we've thrown it around. We've chosen not to have Zoom auctions very consciously because we think we've done it better for those cases, but we are now very much excited, looking forward to and anticipating you conducting your first Zoom auction, the first Zoom auction in the history of Gary Perrin Associates. That's 9 Fuller Street. Philip, that comes up. Let me just check the date and time. It comes up on Thursday at 6 p.m. Tell us about 9 Fuller Street.
Well, Gary, it's a beautiful house. First of all, Fuller Street, what a great location because you're a couple of suburbs for the price of one, really. You're South Caulfield, you're East Brighton, you're close to public transport. You can walk to the beach from there. You'd get quite fit doing that, but you can walk to the beach from there. So a really good spot, a really good home, a very solid brick home that is completely livable as it is, but just waiting for some new party to buy and take it into the year 2020 and beyond. So I like that as a piece of real estate. Looking forward to doing this Zoom auction, Gary. Controversially, I'm going to be doing it obviously dressed somewhat like I'm dressed now, but I will be in my underpants like I am at the moment. So it'll be actually the first auction I've ever done in my underpants.
Well, I've got to say, Phil, that if anybody thought the show standard couldn't go any lower, they've just found a new low now with that sickening image. If anybody wants to tune in, just be in touch with our office. You've got a day or so to get the dial moving on your phone. Although there's no real dials anymore, is there? But be in touch with us. We will organise to hook you up by. Is it going to be? It could be Zoom or it could be some other medium, Philip. Maybe.
No, it'll either be Zoom or another medium. Thank you, Gary. Haven't decided on that yet. And just as a little bit of a historical perspective, you say that to move the dial on the phone. So all of our viewers over the age of 40 probably remember the phone with the dial on it. But viewers, just a little bit of history. I grew up, as you all know, in Cootamundra in New South Wales, where there was no dial on the phone. You used to pick up the phone and wait for the operator, and then you would give the phone number to the operator, and the operator would then patch you through. I kid you not. And it was well known that the operators used to listen into all the conversations. So it only seems like yesterday, Gary, that we were doing that.
And of course, you know, Cootamundra wasn't a big place, so the Kingston's phone number was 23. I think that was the phone number.
No, it wasn't
23. Yeah.
But it was 486. It was 486. Like, you know, they pretty much reckoned the Kingstons was so simple we had to give them numbers that kind of sequentially followed. So 1, 2, 3 was gone, as was 2, 4, 6. So my father and mother got 486.
It's very, very good. And that's probably the longest number in the whole directory, the Cootamundra phone directory. So let's quickly just run through some of the properties we've got listed and due to go to auction this weekend. One at 314 Orrong Road, Caulfield North. Philip, What a great property this is. Can you tell us anything about it at all?
No, I can't, Gary, because I haven't got any of that information in front of me. So perhaps you can.
The information's on the screen there, Philip. I'd like to catch you out. 1 at 47 Almond Street, also due to go to auction. What a great looking property, Phil.
That I can tell you about, Gary. Shout out to the builders that have produced this wonderful home. They do such great work, and this is brand new brilliance in a location where you can walk to 2 trams and Princess Park and Cafe Delish and Fress and Mr. Brightside. So great spot there and great home.
And of course, the last auction to review, Philip, is GO8 at 155 to 157 in Balaclava Road. Daniel, Nick, Mark and Jeremy Rose, and some information about that on the screen now. A wonderful looking property, Philip, and of course in a terrific location. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1 car space, and looking good by judging by the photos on the screen. We should introduce Leah Calnan because she's been away. It's not like she's got nothing to do, Philip. She's a busy lady, the president of the REIV, also the owner of her own real estate agency, Phil, and a very successful one. So shall we, without any further ado, introduce and welcome her to join us on this journey?
What a lovely introduction, Gary, when you go, without further ado.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have to be the most old-fashioned introduction that we've ever given anybody, but let's do it.
Well, it is with great pleasure that we welcome and introduce a very well-known face in Melbourne real estate circles, and of course, out there in the industry. We are fortunate to have the president of the REIV, Leah Calnan, here today to answer some questions and address some of the hard-hitting questions that we have coming at you in the dirty dozen, we call this section. No particular reason other than it would be fitting as part of GPTV to do that. So we've got 12 questions for you. We'll try to get them through them quickly. But firstly, how are you, Leah? How are you going? How is the real estate industry going out there through this difficult time?
Firstly, I am very good. The strange living in lockdown. My children come in and check on me every hour or so to make sure I'm still working, which is, you know, I thought I was the parent, not them. But look, overall, the industry is adapting and working very, very well with stage 4 lockdown.
Thank you, because so much great stuff has been put out from the REIV regularly. You know, and a variety, not just informative information, but also, you know, done a series of videos talking about mental health, helping each other through this time. And it's been great to see an industry that is competitive, yet still rallying together to help each other. And that's really come very much out of the REIV, so, and yourself, your office. So thank you for that. Thank you and Gil. And thanks for the great work you do for us.
Leah, before we jump into this, I just always like to start with an apology. So I'd just like to apologise on behalf of Gary Pure and Associates, our entire organisation, for anything that may be said in this interview. So it's just better for us to apologise up front, given the fact that, I don't know about for Gary, but for me, having you on the show is always a bit like I've been dragged in front of the headmistress or the headmaster or whatever one calls it today. So I just want to apologise and say I wasn't there, I didn't do it, I don't know what you're talking about, and who are you anyway?
Yes. We're both off the hook, that's right, exactly. We talked about, you know, that you were in a long queue of people wanting to get on the show. But we're not going to ask you to verify that or otherwise, but we will get into the 12 questions. We're going to start off with this one, Lee. I'm a buyer for a property now. Can I see it before making a final commitment to purchase?
So no, buyers cannot physically view a property during stage 4 lockdown. What they can do, and what you know, no doubt you guys are doing, is offering lots of different alternatives. So whether it be a Zoom inspection, or you may have also already prepared some virtually you know, structured videos so you're able to show prospective purchasers.
So just on that, Leah, because you know most real estate agents, they get given a rule and then they sit around debating how they can bend the
break
rule.
it. Mm-hmm.
So I've got a scenario that I'm just going to put to you because I think this is brilliant, right? We have a vacant property, so there's no one living there.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a buyer that lives within 5 kilometres of this vacant property. So our owner also lives within 5 kilometres of the vacant property. So our owner goes to that property, they unlock the door and leave it open. Then the buyer goes out for a walk and just happens to walk past that vacant property and goes, there's a door open, that's part of my exercise. I might just walk through this vacant property and continue my exercise by going in the front door, up the stairs, down the stairs and out the back door. Is that legal?
Oh, that's a really interesting one, Philip. I would think that they're out doing their work, their week or their daily exercise. They're within the 5K radius. I think potentially the real estate agent isn't doing anything wrong. And remember, it would be them who would be getting the fine, not us. So
okay, so
yeah.
Keep in mind that this will be all over now. Channel 9,
Yes.
Channel 10. The three of us have finally found the brilliant way to crack this lockdown.
A loophole. Yeah.
The person would have to keep running and moving the whole time to prove that they're exercising, because if they stop for a minute, then the exercise is over. Be a different category.
So maybe we'll put in the entrance or like a skipping rope and an obstacle course as they work their way.
Get a hopscotch all the way down.
Weights, a treadmill in the back.
All right, so let's get on with the Dirty Dozen number 2. If I want to sell now, how do I do so? Which is pretty much linked into question number 1, but we may as well continue.
So you can vendors can absolutely sell property now. The challenge that we do have is that photographers aren't able to be engaged. They won't be allowed to operate during the stage 4 lockdown. So if you've already got photos, you would be able to obviously upload them. But I've said a couple of times now, one of the things or two of the things that people do in lockdown is that they will do online shopping or they'll browse real estate. Yeah. So if I was a vendor and I had intentions to put my property on the market, if I had everything ready to go, I would certainly have it up there advertising now.
Although I suppose, just to go to your point on the lockdown, photographers not being able to do their work, I'm presuming if a photographer goes for a walk with a camera and walks past a house that's vacant and does the exercises in the house and takes photographs, that's pretty normal, that's pretty okay?
I'll leave it up to their discretion.
Let me get off the hook, because this is not going the way I should be going. Very serious media distribution. I'm really looking for out. We are, just to be clear, this is a bit of frivolity. We know the rules. We're not really serious when we talk about playing that way, but thank you, Philip, for your creative suggestions, and I'll get you out of that one, Leah.
Thank you.
I've sold a property. I'm the buyer. I'm due to settle during lockdown. Am I entitled to, can I have a pre-settlement inspection before settlement?
So that's a really interesting question at the moment. We understood that to be all okay as of last week, that services relating to facilitating the up-and-coming settlement included finance appointments, pest and building, and pre-settlement inspection. However, last Thursday we had 2 occasions where agents had actually booked times for their purchases, and they had settlements happening this week. The purchasers were pulled over by the police and the police turned them around. So we do have that question direct with government at the moment to say, that's crazy. You need to be able to allow the purchaser to inspect the property because the agent's not doing it.
Okay, so Philip, yes, they could have run there in the 5 kilometres.
We've got another hard-hitting question, and I've clearly, this is a very incisive program. This with, what are the people behind Watergate? It was Bernstein and remember Watergate?
Ooh.
Okay, well,
no.
hard
I'm younger than I look.
Yeah, clearly. How do real estate agents put up a sold sticker now, Leah?
I actually had that question asked on Sunday. Again, I would anticipate it would fall under the services relating to the up-and-coming settlements. If they're driving past or if they're within that 5K radius, they could perhaps do it on their way to go and do their shopping or their exercise.
And of course, that's followed up by a second part to that question. What is the average IQ of a real estate agent?
Look, it's gone up dramatically in the last 5 months because they have all learnt to be very adaptive and agile and think on their feet.
Good answer. Good answer.
You're making these questions that were
they went on my list.
He's got his own little agenda and script here. It's unbelievable. used to study at RE. We went to study the real estate course. This is true, and I know that's a bit of it. And English was one of the subjects in the real estate course, and we had to read. And then Philip would start reading, and then he'd all of a sudden start going to an erotic tale, which wasn't in the script anywhere. No one could understand it. Anyway, I don't know.
That's actually a true story, Leah. And I was instantly given a pass in English in the real estate course way back when. They just wanted to get me out of the lecture theatre.
Well,
I can't imagine why.
It was a negotiated outcome. We said if we both don't come back to class and disrupt it, will you give us 50 and get rid of us? And they agreed to it. So number 5, back to the dirty dozen. Let's not get away from here. If I want to buy but have a builder check the property before I commit to it, can I do this now?
So no, well, not technically. You have to have a signed contract in place. So what we're seeing at the moment, and what's really transpired over the last week, is that contracts are being entered into, subject to pest and building, subject to finance, and then subject to viewing. So if somebody is really keen on a property, they can certainly execute the sale contract, put down a $1,000 deposit, and then able to organise that pest and building inspection.
Okay, and
but remember, the agent doesn't have to be there, and that's where agents have found it a little bit hard to adjust. They're thinking that facilitating means they actually have to be there, and they don't. They can just book the appointment.
Well, you've got to remember, Leah, that real estate agents think they're the most important people on the planet. So how can anything possibly happen without a real estate agent being there? Moving along from the cerebral capabilities of real estate agents, let's talk about a really important thing that a lot of people are wondering about, both landlords and tenants. Have rents gone down in most Melbourne areas? And if so, by how much in approximate percentage terms, generally speaking, do you think they've gone down? If in fact, Leah, they've gone down?
Yeah, again, it's a really interesting question. So the data at the moment for between the June 2020 and July 2020, the inner city area, we've seen a decrease of about 3% in the average rent. When we move out to middle Melbourne, we've seen a decrease of 3.5%. And we've also seen a decrease out in the outer Melbourne. But then I have to say, they're the stats that are coming through on a weekly basis through to the REIV. But, in my business, I've noticed on the ground, properties are pretty consistent. So we're not seeing, a tenant gives their 28 days notice and vacates. We're not seeing dramatic decreases. We're not seeing increases, but we're seeing that properties return to the market at the same rent.
Interesting, Gary. Do you have a perspective on that? Because that would not be our experience.
No, we're finding that there is a lot of properties. Most properties are being let less, some significantly less. So we're finding that that's probably not consistent with what we are seeing in our business. But and I know there's a lot for rent in the inner city now. So it would be interesting maybe to know what the vacancy period is, because maybe the rents are being maintained, but maybe the vacancies are significantly longer. Which could also be interesting. And by that's hearing my dog bark, I've formed a new bond with my dog since I've been who hasn't known for the last 10 years of its life, and now demands to come in here when the door's closed, so excuse that. So that probably answers our next question about the areas that have been most and least affected. If I'm a landlord and tenants just aren't paying right now, what can I do about that?
Look, it's still absolutely a struggle. Prior to us going into stage 4 lockdown, we knew VCAT had 3,500 applications in the backlog. So, that's been a great concern for us, because we know there are a very small portion of tenants who are doing the wrong thing and not paying their rent and sitting in a property rent-free. And unfortunately, that will probably carry on through until, not only we come out of the lockdown, but when we see the omnibus bill finish. So at the moment, all you can do is go through that VCAT process, wait for your orders, and, try where you possibly can to try and negotiate for a tenancy to end.
I mean, just on that, does the government have an understanding? I mean, there are some people that have got one property as an investment, they live off the rent. And I mean, it's a concept offered of landlords as somebody, lord of the manor with massive holdings. But there are people out there that have been on jobs all their life that have, say, bought a property, they've got their one property, which is their retirement. Does the government kind of understand the pain that is as great for them as it could be for the person renting? for a lot of these people?
No, unfortunately, government doesn't look at it like that. They're looking at it, we've got, the Andrews government, one of their key election promises was around the review of the Residential Tenancy Act, and they had a big focus on security of tenure. Unfortunately, it seems that consumer is only the tenant, it's not the landlord. And there is a terrible misconception that, all landlords are wealthy and rich. And I think it's 3/4 of the private rental market, they only own one property. And there are many, many examples that we have at the moment where tenants are, not just a month behind, but 5-6 months behind. And, whilst landlord insurance will cover a portion of it, there'll be owners that will be out of pocket as we come out of this.
One of our clients, a young lady who rented her home out, has run Consumer Affairs for some advice because they had a problem with a tenant. And Consumer Affairs said, we only help tenants, not landlords. You can afford to go and get a lawyer or get advice and pay for it, which I thought was extraordinary. It just came to my attention last week. So,
yeah, and that's terrible. That is not what Consumer Affairs is supposed to be. And, they regulate the real estate industry and they have a bias against the real estate industry, against agents, property managers and landlords. And, the word consumer should be applicable to everyone.
Just going to jump in here, just in case Consumer Affairs watch this. In fact, we know Consumer Affairs watch the show. We know that they get a lot of their information from GPTV. Consumer Affairs, I think you do a great job. I'm very happy with everything that you're doing, although I can give you the names and addresses of agents that aren't.
Oh, it's shocking. Can you...
So Philip doesn't want the audit coming next week.
I think we might just have you and me next time, Leah.
So we've got a question about stamp duty coming up, Leah. It's not a trick question, but how much stamp duty does a first home buyer have to pay if they buy a property for $580,000? And you have got 30 seconds to answer this question, and the time starts now.
Oh, gee. So the stamp duty is, I'm pretty sure it's halved between them making the contribution and government making the contribution. There are lots of other add-on benefits with regards to the first home buyer or the, I don't think they call it the first home buyer grant anymore, but they have extended it. And there are some thresholds on the amounts that they can borrow.
Thanks, Leah. I can see Gary nodding his head in agreement as though he's got the answer to that question. Gary, you insist on asking questions about poor, time-stressed people that come on this show when you already know the answer.
Phil, I took that question out. We've got an old script there. I wanted to ask about the 5% deposit scheme, which was brought through. And that was released by the Treasurer. Is that having any effect? Is it helping buyers? Is it holding up prices? Can you tell us a bit about that, please?
Yeah, it's had a lot of positive impact. And I know when it was first released, which I think the second round came out early July, regional Victoria just couldn't keep up with the demand. So the threshold, I think, is $600,000. They were selling blocks of land. So not only were they getting the benefits of that financial assistance through government, they were also getting the benefits of the building grant, which was another $25,000. And I know a Wodonga agent I spoke to, they had 50 blocks of land and sold 48 in 1 month. So there are certainly some good opportunities in regional Victoria.
It's just those people in Wodonga can't quite get across the border like they
No,
thought.
that's right. They can't go anywhere, but...
Yeah, we're going to be doing an online auction this Thursday, which for us will be our first online auction. And as you well know, there's a host of different platforms that you can use, and most of them seem to be pretty successful. I'm just wondering, because we've looked at all of the platforms, and I'm just wondering if there are about 6 people that are interested in buying this. If all 6 people go out for a walk on Thursday evening and happen to be doing exercises in front of the property while I'm also there, and I start suggesting numbers, is that legal?
Well, no, because you can't be at the property to do the auction. You have to be at home to do the auction.
No. I'm there because I'm part of my 1 hour's exercise.
Oh, I think you might be blending those lines a little bit.
All right.
fact, Phil, they did give us notice that you can't even conduct the auction from the office. So you look like you're in our boardroom, where really he's sitting by his swimming pool with nothing on below his shirt and jacket. Well, I shouldn't say nothing, sort of like swimmers, like...
Hopefully pants.
Exactly right. So the fact that we've got our office in the background hopefully won't get us in trouble, because we are not at our offices. But I understand maybe some agents will get confused about that. You've said some clarity.
Yeah.
I appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're buying off the plan. Can people buy off the plan now and save money? Is there still stamp duty savings in that case?
Yeah, absolutely. There's still opportunities to buy off the plan. I think the main question that comes up with off the plan is with regards to the potential of any cladding issues down the track. So I know that, existing properties, we've got cladding issues. There often has been some queries depending on where that build stage is at, on the purchaser getting like an undertaking to confirm that the property is, not a cladding issue building. But there are certainly opportunities, and I think there'll be developers out there that, looking for opportunities to buy or to sell properties. Yes. It would be remiss of me not to say it's always a good time to buy real estate.
Of course, and certainly when, I guess, coming out of this, there will be probably some development, let's say appropriate development, that will certainly get the economy running again, which would be fantastic.
Leo, go on.
And sorry,
I was going to ask the land tax question, Gary, but you can ask it.
I'm worried because you're paraphrasing and adding all these things to the questions. Somebody running around to the land tax office in their exercise now to try to land tax, please go ahead.
So land tax, it's the land tax and stamp duty are the two biggest issues for any investor, but land tax has definitely become, I think, the biggest issue for landlords that are not your single owner landlords. Do we think we'll ever make any progress on this issue? I know it's a federal issue and we know it's also a state issue, but can you see any light at the end of the tunnel? And the tunnel, if we said over the next 5 years, do we think that the federal government and the states will ever get together on this issue?
Look, I think the reality is that the industry contributes so much money into the state's economy, on an annual basis. So I think it sits at about 47%. It would be a brave move by either government to remove land tax, because they'd have to replace it with something else. So, and where would you replace it and what would it look like? So there was some talk a few months ago with regards to stamp duty, stamp duty being removed, and there being the introduction of a blanket tax that would be applicable for all homeowners. But then it gets into the detail of, well, what about if it's a pension? Somebody's lived in their house for 60 years. Should they be paying that additional tax on an annual basis? So it's a really complicated scenario, and I don't think any government, whilst they might have a win to remove it from one section of cohort of Victorians, it would have to be put somewhere else in order to make up those funds.
So, Leah, is what you're saying is that under your presidency, you will not be instrumental for abolishing stamp duty and land tax? Is that what you're just kind of throwing up your hands and saying,
yeah,
no, too hard?
Yeah, look, it's probably not going to happen on my watch.
Look, we don't think any less of you, but it was kind of... Are you saying that was an unreasonable expectation for us to have of you? Is that what you're saying? We thought you could do anything. Yeah.
Look, if I can get private inspections happening through stage 4 lockdown, I think I've done a little bit more.
I mean, is there any chance we can get private inspections? Are we still working on that? I mean, can we? I mean, really, for somebody to go with a mask, with the gloves, and to social distance from someone, to let them in a house, one person don't touch anything. How does that put anybody at risk in the public? I mean, how do you over from that? Yeah. And that's
the part, Gary, that's so frustrating, because we wrote to the Premier's office on the 30th of March and said, we want to be deemed an essential service. We provide shelter. We should be. And no, not only was that letter not acknowledged, but it wasn't responded to. So, you know, we've done everything possible to adhere to it. I'm not aware of there being any COVID cases in any aspect of real estate across the state. And agents can do it. We've shown that we can do it. But it's an argument that will continue week in, week out until we come out of stage 4.
Maybe it will come, maybe later in the piece we will get that, but I'm glad you're still pushing for it. Hopefully that letter isn't sitting in the inbox to be opened in November, and maybe we'll get open and considered. Let's hope so. You know, we have these 12 set questions. There's probably been 15. Philip's already gone on some rant. We've told you we did always wasted your time, but you haven't wasted our time. So thank you so much because you've provided such great information to us and to our viewers, and added fantastic value again. And at least when people watch this week's edition of GPTV, they'll know that there's someone here that makes sense and knows what they're talking about. For that, we're grateful. So I just want to thank you so much for that, for agreeing to our interview and your time. It's the second time you've been on in recent times. So thank you. We wish you and your family well through this period, and good health. Thanks for everything you do for our industry. We really are we are so grateful and so lucky to have you in the position you're in. Thank you again, once again.
Thanks, Leah. You've been fabulous. Thank you.
So, Phil, that was our new segment, The Dirty Dozen. 12 questions, confronting questions, and, of course, handled so beautifully and professionally from Leah Calnan.
Gary, I think that was such a hard-hitting, good interview, that this concept of a dirty dozen. Let's bring it on as a regular segment, the Dirty Dozen, where we can interview via Zoom interesting people around town. And probably rename it in the process. But great to have the President on, great for her to give us her valuable time, because goodness knows she's being pulled all left, right and centre by everybody that needs an answer on something. So great to have you on, Leah. Thanks again. And Gary, as usual, thanks for being my co-host on GPTV. I'm Philip Kingston. Have a fabulous week.
I'm Gary Peer. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.